Fox News alert just moments ago, President Trump making a major announcement from the Oval Office that the United States and Mexico have reached a, quote, understanding that could lead to an overhaul of the North American Free Trade Agreement, a name that President Trump doesn't even want to keep around. The president now putting Canada on the spot. This is Outnumbered. I'm Dagen McDowell, and here today, Fox News correspondent Molly Line. Good to see you.
Great to be here.
Town Hall editor, Fox News contributor Katie Pavlich, Democratic strategist, Fox News contributor Jessica Tarlov, and joining us on this sofa today, conservative radio talk show host, and honored to be in the same room with this gentleman, Larry Elder.
Well, we'll see if you feel that way at the end of the hour.
You are outnumbered. Again, I'm going to channel my best Harris Faulkner and say we're just going to cut through the weeds on this and get to the big picture on this agreement. Good to have you here, Larry.
Thank you very much for having me.
So this agreement comes after representatives from the United States and Mexico negotiated through the weekend. During the announcement, President Trump spoke over the speakerphone with the president of Mexico, doing his best chief executive officer. Now the focus moves on to Canada. Canada not involved in the tentative deal, but reports say Canada is expected to join the talks immediately. The Canadian foreign minister weighing in, saying they will only sign a new NAFTA deal that serves Canadian interest. Here's the president in the Oval Office speaking with the president of Mexico.
I like to call this deal the United States-Mexico Trade Agreement. I think it's an elegant name. I think NAFTA has a lot of bad connotations for the United States because it was a ripoff. It was a deal that was a horrible deal for our country. And I think it's got a lot of bad connotations to a lot of people. And so we will probably, you and I will agree to the name. We will see whether or not we decide to put up Canada or just do a separate deal with Canada if they want to make the deal. The simplest deal is more or less already made.
Some of the sticking points in these negotiations with Mexico, the overall NAFTA negotiations started last October, Larry, but then we started doing a bilateral deal with Mexico to iron out specific issues that we had with them. One was the dispute resolution mechanism, how we settled disputes. The U.S. didn't like the fact that all companies had to go to this international tribunal. Maybe there'll be some exemptions there. But to avoid getting in the weeds with this, the big picture is this is a movement forward on trade, and I'll point to these markets, the S&P, the NASDAQ, and the Russell 2000, all hitting all-time highs earlier in the day. So this is good news regardless of how you look at it.
Right. It's also a campaign promise that he's now fulfilled. And if you look at the crawl as he was speaking, the market was going up. Look, I campaigned for president with the president, but one of the things I did not like about him was the protectionism. But I got to tell you, I see now what the goal is. The goal is to lower the barriers for all of our trading partners. And it looks as if he's doing that.
Katie?
Well, politically, this is going to be interesting for Democrats because Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer have all called for a reworking of NAFTA, saying that it deeply has affected American workers, American manufacturing negatively, and the president agrees with that. And not only does he agree, he's actually walked the walk and kept this campaign promise to rework out this negotiation. When it comes to Canada, it sure puts a lot of pressure on them to come to the table. The president's saying, look, you can either get in with us, come to terms with what we're talking about, Mexico's done it, or we'll continue to put tariffs on your goods, which is not going to be good for your economy.
Well, one point, Jessica, I'll bring you in here. The Foreign Minister of Canada, Chrystia Freeland, is scheduled to go to Europe this week, visiting Germany, Ukraine, and France. So the timeline remains up in the air. But the president said that he's going to be calling Trudeau or speaking with Trudeau on the phone about this.
Perhaps on speakerphone again for all of us.
With a working speakerphone.
The president got elected to be the chief executive officer of the United States of America.
I totally get it.
That is such a boardroom thing.
It is totally a boardroom thing, and he definitely needed that this morning after the last week that he's had, and we'll get into more of that. I agree with you, Katie. It does put a lot of Democrats in a difficult spot here, and Democrats that you've seen in the middle of the country, like Sherrod Brown, Danny O'Connor, Connor Lamb, that are embracing more of President Trump's policies and saying it's okay, you can still want a Democrat in office who's going to go along with the president on X, Y, and Z issues, but I'll stand tough on Obamacare gender, protecting a woman's right to choose, et cetera, even if I might be personally pro-life. So it's a difficult dance, but it's a massive country, and I think politicians on both sides of the aisle are going to have to pick and choose parts of President Trump's agenda, even on the Republican side, that they're supportive of, and then make the case to their constituents come November.
Trade is, Molly, I want to get to this piece of sound that we have from the president, but trade is one of the linchpins of what he ran on and why the president won. It was bringing jobs back to the United States and creating a level playing field for everyone here in the U.S. And we still have a lot of fights ahead of us. We have steel and aluminum tariffs that we put on all of our even most important trading partners. He mentioned China in this talk, that China is not really going anywhere in terms of the negotiations that were happening last week. But again, it comes down to the farmers, and I want you to listen to this and get your reaction.
It's an incredible deal. It's an incredible deal for both parties. Most importantly, it's an incredible deal for the workers and for the citizens of both countries. Our farmers are going to be so happy. You know, the farmers have stuck with me. I said we were going to do this, and Mexico's promised to immediately start purchasing as much farm product as they can. They're going to work on that very hard.
That goes right to the voting base, the farmers, who have been hurt by retaliatory tariffs from the likes of China.
Particularly that back and forth, the trade war with China. I just did a story not too long ago about the tariffs on seafood, and that's striking the industries in Maine, the lobster industry in Maine. But as far as looking towards the midterms, interesting about this is that there will be turnover in Mexico. They have a new president-elect. It takes at least 90 days for this to go through Congress. So in a sense, this is preliminary. The deal won't be completely approved. This is a preliminary before the midterms, so we can kind of ride this as a win without actually waiting to see what the ramifications are, how it works, if it works really well. And the question he kind of laid out there was trying to rename this, and the question is Canada going to be pulled in? How greatly will this look anything like it did before? Will NAFTA exist in the future? He's kind of implied there that maybe not.
And that's, I think, going to be the big question for Democrats. Are you going to continue to say, as Chuck Schumer has, that the president talks a big game on trade but doesn't get any results while these negotiations are ongoing? And it's going to be difficult to prove them, but Democrats are going to have to go back to their districts, back to their constituencies, and senators in red states are going to have to figure out whether they are going to get on board with either the narrative or anything that passes through Congress on this issue, and choosing between Trump's agenda with trade or deciding to continue to be negative and oppose everything that he's doing.
I'll add to that, though, they not only have to talk to their constituents, they also need to talk to union leaders.
Right.
Because union leaders have voiced support for some of the things that President Trump wants to do. So.
Oh, please, Larry, the steelworkers union has been wanting tariffs on imported steel
for a
forever.
long time.
Again, that's one thing people don't point out. That was a big win for the blue states. That was a big win for Democrats.
Well, that's why he shattered that
manufacturing
so-called blue wall. That's how he got Michigan. That's how he got Pennsylvania, by talking about trade and talking about these, what he called dumb deals. And it turns out the deals were pretty dumb. There were a lot of protectionism in there, tariffs in there, he's been able to get rid of. It's really been quite impressive. And the way the farmers have stuck with him, even though they're being hurt short term, very impressive.
This is to all of the Trump supporters who, for months, as I said, tariffs are taxes. I'm very concerned about the destruction of jobs in steel consuming industries. They said patience, patience. Okay, so I'm growing a little patience.
Same here. Same here.
We all need more of that.
But again, if we just really quickly, if we can put a stop to any more aggression, if we can just hold with the tariffs on the $50 billion in imports from China and the same, and if we can hold off on the auto tariffs, then move ahead with the positive developments, then that is a huge win for this president.
Absolutely.
We're expecting to hear heartfelt tributes from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle as the Senate prepares to meet later today for the first time since the death of John McCain. We're also getting new details on plans to honor the longtime lawmaker and war hero. McCain's passing also expected to have a major impact on Capitol Hill. The big changes it may signal ahead.